first went to university, I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher because I like children. And then I started to study English literature and Spanish literature because my professor, when I was taking my first year of English, he said, you seem to like English, writing, and you seem to enjoy literature. He said, if you're a kindergarten teacher, there's only one option at a school to teach kindergarten. But if you're an English teacher, you can teach primary school, junior high school, secondary school. And I had taken Spanish in high school. So he said, if you study Spanish and English, you can teach Spanish or English in primary school, middle school, or secondary school. So you have many more options than if you're just going to be a kindergarten teacher. So I changed. When I graduated, President Kennedy was president, and he established an organization called the Peace Corps, where he wanted to send Americans to other countries to learn about other cultures and bring back this information to Americans, because he thought Americans were very narrow-minded and provincial. So I said, that's a great idea. I can go to Latin America and improve my Spanish. Well, there were no openings in Latin America when I applied. It was the first group in 1961. So I was sent to Nigeria. So bye-bye Spanish. And in Nigeria, I was sent to a teacher training college because I had practice taught. Most of the other volunteers in my group, there were 38 other people, they had never taught. So they went to secondary schools, but I went to a teacher's training college, and part of my responsibility was to supervise practice teachers for about 1 month every term. So that was 3 months per year I had to supervise practice teachers. Well, I didn't know anything about teaching in Nigeria in primary schools. I had practice taught in a junior high school in a small town in Illinois. So teaching in a primary school in Nigeria was all new to me. And the teachers were teaching things that I didn't know. They were teaching Nigerian history, Nigerian geography, the currency system, which was still pounds, shillings and pence and guineas. So I was at a loss. I was supposed to help these teachers. So there were two primary twos. That means there were 2 streams of each class. So I would observe for half the class, the arithmetic class, with one teacher, and then go next door to the other first year class in arithmetic. And I took copious notes. And then after school, I would say, Ocon, today, Benedict wrote the directions on the board, but you said the directions aloud. So tomorrow, write them on the board. And then I told, Benedict, why don't you say them aloud and see what happens and what the difference is. So that's how I first got into small changes, because I had 12 practice teachers to supervise every day. And I couldn't tell them too many things because there wasn't time. So I told each pair of teachers 1 or 2 things to make small changes. So that's one way I got into small changes, from my experience in Nigeria. But the other way was studying literature. Because when you study a poem, you look sometimes at the first draft of the poem, and then you look at the second draft and the third draft from the original author of the poem. Likewise, with a short story, you can see Edgar Allan Poe, his original story, and then he crossed some things out, made some edits, small changes, and then reproduced the final copy. So both from literature and from working with teachers in Nigeria, I got into this idea of small changes. That's kind of the genesis or the beginning of the small change idea. The other reason I kept with small changes is when I heard teachers talk about their teaching, they talked about the lesson. Well, in the lesson, there are maybe, 200-300 communications. So when you refer to the lesson, it's too much to examine, too much to talk about. And so one problem with reflective teaching, in my experience, which we'll get into in the Q&A, is that the unit of analysis is the lesson rather than a smaller unit like a communication that the teacher makes or a student makes. So anyway, when I returned to the United States, I was invited to train Peace Corps volunteers at Teachers College at Columbia University in New York City. They had a contract with the Peace Corps to train volunteers to go to Nigeria. So they invited me to join this training program. And that was only part-time teaching. And we were paid a very small amount, but we got free tuition. So I started taking courses at Teachers College and at Columbia because they didn't cost anything. And after a while, somebody said, why don't you apply for a PhD program? Well, I never had any intention of getting a PhD. I wanted to teach high school in Chicago. But in fact, I did apply, and then I finished my PhD. They invited me to join the faculty, and I continued my exploration of how to work with teachers to get them to understand what they were doing, and sometimes to change what they were doing. First, to understand it, and then usually when they understood it, they realized that they were things, so they wanted to make changes. But small changes are very important because if you make big changes, you don't know what the effect is. So if you have a cold and you sit in a hot tub of water, you take aspirins, you drink apple juice, you drink vodka, and you put a heating pad on your stomach and the cold gets better, you don't know why it gets better because you did 7 different things. If you do one different thing, you can see if it has any effect. So sometimes we tell the teacher to say, change 10 things. It's too many. You don't know what thing that you changed had the effect that the change made. So that's another reason for small changes. So this is more than an introduction. It's kind of into the dialogue about what reflective teaching is.
Yeah.
So speak.
So, and when we were doing the course in January, we talked a lot about reflective practices, but what does it mean to be a reflective teacher?
Well, I use the term for that course because a reflective teacher since about 1983, when Schoen kind of started talking about it and writing about it, it's become kind of a fad, F-A-D, kind of a, this is what you should call looking at what you do. I mean, Dewey in 1938 and before at Teachers College, he was talking about observing your teaching and looking at what you're doing and thinking about it and making changes. But the point is, not until 1983 did it kind of become a fad. And so the reason I titled the course Becoming a More Reflective Teacher is everybody talks about reflective teaching. In none of my articles and in none of my books have I used the word reflective teaching. And I think the reason I haven't is it means so many different things to different people. Now, they usually have a list of things, you're supposed to keep a diary, think about what you do, ask the students to comment on what you do, have peer observations, write down what you remember of what you did, what you remembered of what you did, and record. But recording is only one of a half a dozen things that they think you should do as a reflective teacher. I personally think that writing a diary and trying to remember what you did and write down why you did it and how you might change it is pretty much a waste of time because it's not based on data. And again, if the unit of analysis is a lesson, it's too much to think about what you did, and you can't remember what you did. 2 or 3 communications in a class, how can you remember? And which of the 200 or 300 that you did had what effect? It's impossible to tell. It's absolutely impossible. So that's why I say, 1 sheet of A4 paper, 1 to 3 minutes of a transcription, that's all you need. And that should be the focus of reflecting on your teaching, because it's looking at what you actually did. Another difference between my idea of how to understand your teaching and make changes and the tenets or kind of beliefs of those who advocate reflective teaching is that they think that you should look for problems and then try to solve the problems, and you should evaluate what you do and set new goals. But I don't think you should look for problems. I think you should just look at random, see what something you did, and see, well, now if I do this instead of that, what will happen? So, I ask a question, what did you do over the weekend? And everybody stays silent for a long time. And then somebody says, I shop friend. I shop friend, I visit friend. You don't know what they're talking about. So on a weekend, you might do 200 things. So if I say, what did you do on the weekend? Which of the 200 do you select? So please write down 2 foods you ate on Saturday that you usually don't eat. Write down 1 person you saw Saturday who you usually don't see. So it's a very precise question. So you ask the precise question, have the student write the precise question, write the answer, and compare what the students write with what they say when you say, what did you do over the weekend? So from a general question to a precise question, from asking the question aloud to asking the question and having the students write it. You can also make a smaller change, just say, what did you do over the weekend? Please write the question, write the answer, and compare that with the specific one, or just the oral one with the written one. But that's what I mean by a very small change, and then you can see the result. And it doesn't take a lot of planning.
Mm-hmm. About this diagnosing and responding to a particular problem occurred in the class that you observed as you were reading the transcript, there was a question from one of our participants in the course that how can I say objective and how can I be certain that I am diagnosing the right problem or diagnosing the problem in correct way, and how can I be sure that I respond to this problem in the correct way? That was one of the questions participant asked us, and you in particular during the course. I don't remember the answer, but that was the question on the list of questions that we were supposed to discuss. So that's kind of how to be certain that what we're doing is actually what is needs to be done. That's kind of question.
Well, the only way, first, there's no correct answer. You have to look at what you're doing. Let's say you're asking the students questions about what they read, and they don't answer the questions. And the questions might be in the textbook, written questions in the textbook, printed questions. They can't answer them. So one option is to ask the students to reread the reading passage and to, in pencil, put an X through words that they don't understand. And if they put an X in more than 10 words out of 100, it means that the passage is too difficult. So there's no point in asking the questions because the passage is too difficult. So then you simplify the passage by taking some of the words that they put an X through and either not using those words or substituting a more common word, or drawing a sketch for the meaning of some of the words, or having them look up some of the words in a bilingual dictionary and not write the Russian word equivalent, but just thinking of the meaning and then rereading. And then reading half of the passage instead of the whole passage. I mean, these are half a dozen different options. But the point is, because they can't answer the questions, could be for a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. And one is, the most common is they don't understand what they're reading because it's too difficult.
Yeah.
And the other option is to ask them to write questions. So ask each student to write one yes/no question about the first sentence in the reading passage. The boy hit a ball with a baseball bat. The boy hit a ball with a baseball hat. So see what question they write, starting with is or did. Did the boy? And then see what, how they complete the question. And that will give you a little hint about what they understand and what they don't understand. It might not be not just a vocabulary item, but it might be some function word. The boy hit the ball with a baseball. Maybe they don't know the expression with a, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So they might know he went to the baseball park with a friend. So with a friend and with a bat may seem obvious if you understand English pretty well, but with a friend might mean to them together.
Mm-hmm.
But with the bat, does that mean he's walking with the bat? Maybe they don't know hit. Maybe they don't know the relationship between hit and with a. Again, details are very important. So don't say, oh, they didn't understand the comprehension questions. Or as I said, the passage is too difficult. You have to be much more precise and say what's difficult in the passage. What didn't they understand in the question? So they can, again, put an X in words that they didn't understand in the question that's in the textbook. And having them ask questions, as I said, is another way to get at what they don't understand. But saying the passage is too difficult, as I said, is too broad. It's not precise enough.
Mm-hmm.
And saying they didn't understand the questions, a lot of so-called comprehension questions don't check understanding, they check memory. So let's say they read the passage on Monday. Well, Tuesday is a long time away from Monday. They already had a half a dozen other classes. So I would say more than 50% of the so-called comprehension questions are not comprehension questions, they're checking memory. So please look at the reading passage. And as you look at the reading passage, the first question is, who hit the ball? Who hit the ball? You can write it on the board. The students look at the first sentence. The boy.
Mm-hmm.
Did the boy hit a ball or an apple? Stupid question, but it tells you if they understand better than asking a question, what did the boy do, for example, a day after they read the sentence. So you can change the questions from question word questions, which are most of the questions in textbooks, to yes, no questions and either or questions. And then that helps the student break down the meaning of a sentence. And you can ask, 5 or 6 questions about the same sentence instead of one question about every other sentence. That will tell you much more about comprehension than so-called comprehension questions. Have you hit a ball with a baseball bat? Do you have a baseball bat? Do you have a ball? Do you have a baseball? Please draw a baseball bat. Please draw a baseball. That shows comprehension if they can convert language into sketches. Please gesture hitting a baseball with the baseball bat. So the student stands up, makes the gesture. If they do that, they understand. So you can get at understanding and comprehension without them expressing one word by using gestures, by using sketches. So again, kind of micro-analysis of a small bit of data. And the more they write, the more you can see what they write that's different from what you say. And, you know, I gave the example in the class. I have a million transcripts, but the teacher said, "I like ice cream," and asked the students to write, "I like ice cream." She said it 3 times, but didn't allow them to make any erasings. They could make changes in "I like ice cream," but they couldn't erase anything. There were 40 students in the class. This was the top school in a prefecture in Japan that gets the top scores in English. This was the 3rd year of English in secondary school. And 10 students out of 40 wrote "I like ice cream" correctly. 10. Well, look, the reason that's happening is for many years, the teachers have never looked at what they're actually doing. They've never had them transcribe or do dictations when they allowed them to make the corrections on their own. So in the past, this teacher had them use erasers. So after the dictation, the teacher wrote the passage on the board or gave a handout with the passage, and all the students corrected their notebooks using an eraser, and the teacher went around and they 100% had it. But many of them simply copied the sentence. They had no idea what it meant. They copied it. So when she said it, they didn't get it. She gave them the correct answer. They corrected it, and she assumed they understood. Or there are multiple choice items in the textbook. And they circle the right word, and the teacher thinks they understand. And not only do they understand, but that they've mastered the language. You can understand something and forget it, you know, the next day. So looking precisely at what students actually do is as important as looking at having teachers look at exactly what they do. And it's a very big problem that we don't do that. We give tests, waste of time. You make the test, you administer the test, you correct the test. The students often just look at the score. Sometimes they look at the corrections, but just because they look at the corrections doesn't mean that they suddenly are going to master. Ah, now I know. I mean, they have to process these things at least 30 times, one particular sentence. I hit the ball with my baseball bat. I hit my baseball with a broom. I hit my baseball with a tennis racket. I hit my baseball with a book. They have to practice that over and over and over to master it. So even if they get the correct answer and who hit the baseball, the boy, what did he hit the ball with? A baseball bat, doesn't mean they can say the sentence. Totally two events.
Absolutely. So another question was how we can give feedback on these such activities and on this, to our students. How can we provide an effective feedback to our students?
Well, number one, never say "very good" after they get it correct. Never say "excellent." That limits stretching their minds, okay? There's a man named Kohn. I can give you the reference at some point. Anyway, this guy has studied feedback, this kind of feedback for years. Anyway, every student that I've met and other people who've done studies, they want to be corrected. But simply, let's say the student, you hold up a cup and you say, "What's this?" And the student says "cup." And then you say "a cup." And then you go to another student. Well, the student doesn't hear the "up." So restating the correct form is a waste of time. So if you hold up a cup and they say "cup," One option is to draw a cup on the board, and before cup, put a dot, and then point to the dot and mouth with your mouth. Okay, a cup. Now, why mouth with your mouth? I mean, mouth the word and draw a dot instead of saying a cup. Well, you don't hear a cup. You don't hear a.
No.
So that's why they say cup. You don't hear it. Even a native speaker finds it difficult to hear. It has to be there. It's just a very slight sound. But if they see this grammatical point in a different medium other than speech, so this they see with their eyes, and a dot they see with their eyes. So presenting visual feedback for oral errors is very helpful. For written errors, it's also helpful. So you can write a dot for a in written errors too. Now, I've asked many students to draw a sketch for is because they confuse is and are. The boy is here, the boys is here. So they draw one equal sign for is, two equal signs for are. So you draw the symbols on the board. Symbols require thinking and processing, different part of the brain. If it's just right,
Sorry.
two equal signs. So one way to give feedback, kind of a general principle, is give feedback in a different medium from the medium they're using. By medium, I use speech, gestures. For instance, let's say the word is voice, and they forget the V. Well, you can just hold up two fingers like this. Now, they might think that this is two, and then you say, no, it's not two, it's a letter. Okay. What letter is this?
E. Is it E?
And this one?
It could be M.
Could be M.
Well, this could be N.
Could be. So look, you never saw this before in your life, and you did it. So I've done this with elementary students, all age students. And then I ask them, please spell the word. C, U,
P.
So they spell it with their fingers. That's sign language, one kind of sign language. So always give feedback in a medium different from the medium in which they communicated. Gestures, mouthing, symbols on the board, sketches. Symbols and sketches are different. Those are two different mediums. So for stress, you can say la la instead of la la, la la. You can draw boxes for a big box for heavy stress, small boxes for less stress. So instead of just saying he waited with the emphasis on the first, wait, you draw a big box for wait and a small box for id. Waited, waited. Instead of just saying waited 10 times, draw the boxes and then draw a small box for wait and a big box for the difference and see the difference. So seeing and hearing, very important. Now in elementary school, they use sandpaper for the letters. So they close their eyes and you give them the letter E made out of sandpaper, and they close their eyes and move their fingers around the sandpaper to trace the letter E, or whatever letter it is. So that's a form of Braille. I mean, Braille is more complicated than tracing the shape of a letter, But Braille is another option, at least for some of the common letters. You could write some of the common letters in Braille and put the dots on the board representing at least the vowels in Braille. And you can point to the Braille version of A-E-I-O-U instead of just writing A-E-I-O-U. And you can use numbers for, like E is pronounced long E and short E. So the short E you can represent as 2. Is A1, A11. A-E-U. U is, if you can pronounce short and long, I can't think of it now, but anyway, the vowels can be short and long, and you can give them numbers. So Michael West, 1960, wrote a dictionary, and he wrote the pronunciation using numbers instead of letters, because the kids had trouble with the letters. So you can use the phonetic alphabet for some of the common letters, and you can use numbers. And the students can come up. You don't have to use 1-1. They can. I want a number for the pronunciation of A in this word and in this word, and they can write a number for it.
Yeah.
You can have the numbers on the board and the words with the numbers above them. So the more ways you represent the same thing, the better. The usual way to give feedback is to repeat the same thing in the same medium over and over again.
Yeah.
And if they didn't hear it the first time, they're not going to necessarily hear it the second time or the third time.
That's true.
So seeing it, feeling it, very important, rather than just hearing it or seeing it alone.
So I'm going to ask you kind of probably strange and rather general question, but I'm sure that you've got a really nice answer to this question. So what's the teacher's job is? So what's the teacher's job?
Well, to get out of the way and simply be there to give tasks and give feedback. And one way to get out of the way is to be in the back of the room sometimes, so that the students are attending to what they can hear, and then have students go to the front of the board and write things on the board, so that the students are the center of attention, not the teacher. Now, all the commercial videos that I've seen produced by the maiden publishers, DVDs of lessons, everyone focuses on the teacher. And then they give a quick shot of the class. You can't hear what the students are saying. Unless one student is talking, then they might focus on that one student for a few seconds, then back to the teacher. So the focus should be on the students, not the teacher. That's what I mean by get out of the way. You give tasks and you give feedback. Now, obviously, if you're going to use gestures to give feedback, they have to see you. But they can turn around if you're in the back of the class, or you can go to the front of the class for a brief period of time, give you a visual feedback. But in giving the visual feedback, the focus should be on what the students then do. And if they don't change, when you go like this for M, then you draw on the board a different thing for M, or you go something like that. So you give it in different ways. But again, the focus is on then what the student does after you give the feedback, not on you. So as I said, every DVD or online thing I've seen, the focus is on the teacher. I just looked at a lot of videos about reflective teaching. Everyone shows somebody talking with no examples, talking to the audience. The audience is doing nothing. So the students have to constantly be doing tasks. You give the feedback, they change the performance that they gave until it's correct. And so, I talk about teaching I like to swim, because in some countries they say I like to swim. Oh, I'm sorry, I like to play swim, I like to play baseball, I like to play everything. So I write on the board in the first column an eyeball. I. Second column, a heart for like. 2 hearts for love. Third column, number 2. Fourth column, the play sign from a DVD player or the play sign on your iPod where you play music. The arrow pointing to the right, that's play. So I like to play. And then sometimes you don't play. You have to do it like you do judo. So if you do, you draw a piece of paper with 6 dots on it and a pencil, a to-do list. I like to do. Okay. And then for nothing, there's a symbol for nothing, which is a circle with a line through it. That means nothing. Again, the students can, but anyway, that's what the students come up with when I ask them. So then, and in the fourth column, you show somebody dancing, a sketch of somebody dancing, swimming, a baseball bat and a baseball, somebody with a judo costume on, a round ball on the ground. So I like to play soccer. And then you point to the same thing again, the same ball. I like to play rugby. I like to play football. The same ball can be for 3 different sports. So you point to the eye, but you don't do it. The student is in front of the room, points to eye, like to play baseball, one at a time. Then after the other students practice it and write it, then the student taps all the sketches, waits 5 seconds, points to a student. So they have to remember everything. I like to play baseball. I like to do judo. And then they just point to judo, and then they have to do everything. I like to play judo. See? But the teacher is in the background. The students draw the sketches. The students point to the sketches. The teacher directs the students on what they're supposed to do and gives feedback. So sometimes you go into some classrooms with teachers I've worked with, it's difficult initially to find out where the teacher is. They might be sitting in the back row, and the students are pointing to the board, pointing to different students, and then the teacher will be maybe giving feedback from the back of the room by making, like, let's say the teacher, the student says, walk it instead of walked. The teacher says, ta, 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 like that. See if that helps, from the back of the room. So in Somalia, they walked, they talked, they didn't. Walked, talk, no. So that was, you know, each language group has slightly different things that you play with. But saying walked, walked, walked 10 times, they had no effect. Sometimes you drew a T, that helped. Sometimes you had to do something like ta, 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 ta. And giving students time to do things is important. That's another small detail, but you can ask a question and then tell the students to write immediately, or you can ask the question and wait 10 seconds and then say, now write, and see what difference it makes if you give a lot of time or a little time. And then you, of course, have to modulate the amount of time. But the other advantage of getting back to small changes is well, it doesn't take any time to plan. I mean, you learn a few of these little techniques over, and then you just do it. You draw from your repertoire, like a jazz piano player has certain basic things, and then they go here and there in different ways because they're well. But you have to know the music and know different notes that you can present without planning. They have to come off the top of your head spontaneously. And the way you can do it is you introduce these small changes 20 times, and then that small change becomes just part of your repertoire. Then you introduce another small change. You got 2 small changes you can make without thinking about them. I say without thinking about them. Most teaching is out of consciousness. It's out of that's what they talk about in reflect. They say, think about what you did and why you did it. I mean, after the fact, you can say, this is why I did it, but you have no idea why you did it. At the time, you cannot think enough. A lot of old people, some young people, when they're crossing a street, there's a symbol of a person in red, means don't walk. And then it changes to green, and then you walk. And then it starts blinking, and then that means don't walk now, even though it's not red. It means the red is coming. Old people start running across the street, even if they have a cane. Universe have been in. Why do they do that? They don't know why they do it. They don't even know they're doing it. You say, why did you cross the street against the light? Why did you run across the street when you have a sore leg? They don't know why they do it. They just unconsciously do it. So why do the teachers say, okay, now, when they change the topic? I've never seen a lesson plan with okay, now. But every teacher in the world says, okay, now. Very good is not in the lesson plan. No lesson plan says very good. Muy bien hecho, every Spanish-speaking country in the world. In France, très bien. What's the très bien? I forgot. Anyway, the point is, no lesson plan. Why did you do it? I had to give positive feedback. But when we asked the students to transcribe very good, few transcribe it. They say, well, the teacher says it all the time, so it's meaningless to us. Mm-hmm. It's meaningless to us. So many of the things are out of consciousness. Many of the things. So when you ask after the fact, when you think back what you did, you don't know why you did it. So I think asking why is not productive. Asking why is not productive. Oh, I forgot to say, don't believe anything I say. One of the points of my lifetime work is to present options for teachers to explore and evaluate the extent to which they have the effect that they want, which is effective, correct use of language, to be able to listen, read, speak, and write English fluently. And fluently means obviously correctly. Also to enjoy it, to relish developing the language. So we're staying at a hotel where breakfast is included if you want. So we go to breakfast every morning. And this is the 6th year we've come here. And the same waiter is in the room where we had breakfast. And as soon as we come in, he smiles and says, good morning. We give the room number. He moves over to the place where the trays are. Not that we can't lift up the tray ourselves, but he hands us the tray graciously with a big smile. Then my wife likes to have the milk heated and then put in the coffee. So when he sees that we're just about finished with our breakfast, he says, shall I heat your milk now? And when he says, shall I heat your milk, he goes like this, shall I heat your milk? Shall I heat your milk? Now, does he know that he's doing that? No. Does he know how pleasant he looks when he smiles? And eyes kind of gleam, you know? No. It's just part of his behavior that he's grown to exhibit automatically. Mm-hmm. Automatically. So it's the same with teachers. Much of what they do is automatic, out of conscious. He doesn't get there in the morning and say, okay, I have to smile, and when this lady comes in from Tokyo, I have to put the milk in to heat it up. It just becomes part of his repertoire. Sure. So the machine for the cafe au lait was empty this morning. I pushed the button, nothing happened. The woman comes up, there's a woman's, they're they both help with the cooking and also serve. So she says, I'm sorry, it's empty. She fills it. She comes to the table and says, do you want your fail? Say yes. Before I stand up to go and get it, she runs to the machine, fills the cup, and brings it to me. Right? I mean, it's just over time automatic. It's the same with piano playing, dancing, all things that we do. It has to be, we can't think about it at the time. It has to be just part of what we do. Those examples I gave you, I mean, I never said the boy hit the baseball with the baseball bat. I mean, that was a fresh sentence.
Oh, sorry.
It's,
Yeah, no, you just disappeared for a little while. Now I can see you again. Yeah, so
right.
there was some kind of
trouble with the internet connection, but it came back.
yeah.
This is amazing. I taught a course at the New School as well as at ITDI using Zoom. Zoom is terrific and free. I mean, I can't believe this.
So well, like as usual. So well, but I think it's of course it is a disadvantage when the recording stops or the person freezes. But on the other hand, it still feels like a miracle that I'm here in Moscow talking to you in Japan. So it's still let's focus on positive things about our technology and what opportunities it provides.
Gee.
So still, your picture's a little bit frozen.
Oh, gee. You know, we made a mistake. We made a mistake. We didn't record this.
I started recording. I started.
I just. You did?
Yeah, I started recording.
Okay.
And I also record our conversation on the smartphone. So I've got a double recording on my smartphone. So we're safe.
Because this is too much to transcribe for the.
Oops, disappeared again. Let me see. Oh my God. So.
At the end of the interview, the printed interview, you could say, please go to Zoom at this address, and you can listen to the entire recording.
Yeah.
So even though you'll only transcribe bits of it, they can listen to the whole thing. Well, they can watch it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure they can. I'm sure they can. Right. So John, if you don't mind, I've got a couple of questions left, just no more than two. So
I have all night.
So one question is, again, it's not easy probably to answer, but still, whenever we do an activity in class, how do we measure the effectiveness of the activity? How can we be sure that the activity was effective and beneficial for the students?
Well, if you're practicing, I like to play baseball, I like to swim on Monday, and you do these pictures that the students point to, and then they write down the questions. Do you like to, whatever. The next day, you might write on the board, uppercase D, lowercase y, uppercase L, lowercase L-I, lowercase p, lowercase b, point to those letters, and then point to a student and stand between the student and the board and ask the student to say the question. And if the student can elect by just initially saying the initial letter of each word, and then not seeing it, but saying it, then you think maybe he's got the question. And then on Wednesday, You say, do baseball, and point to a student, and they say, do you like to play baseball? Does Alice judo? Does Alice like to do judo? If they can say those questions correctly with those very small cues, they probably have mastered the question. So you can't know on the, it has to be the next day, a week later, you go again, give them a cue, see how much they can say correctly. Over and over, intermittently, not just on the day. You cannot tell on the day what the effect is. That's a fool's errand. You have to do it on a different day.
Okay.
And with different clues, partial information, can they complete the partial information?
Yeah, I see. And in one place in your book on small changes, you use the word playfulness, and I like this
Right.
word very much. So, what is playfulness in language learning?
Well, you go like this for M, and everybody around the world enjoys that. When you mouth words, you draw sketches, and also you personalize language. So, do you like to play baseball? Do you like to dance? Do you like to swim? I hate to play baseball. When you don't like things, it's playful because it's honest. So part of playfulness, when kids play, they're very honest. So it's honest, it's sharing things emotionally. That's part of playfulness. And the other is, well, when you manipulate language, it's playing with language. So if you point to these different sketches, and then you put in MJ, and then some students think it's Michael Jordan, and some students think it's Michael Jackson. Those are people that they associate with playfulness. Michael Jordan was a basketball player. Obviously, sports are playful. And Michael was a singer and a dancer. And most songs that the kids listen to are on one level playful. You know, they play with language. They use words in different ways. So there's a group, I forgot what the group is called, but anyway, there's a song, I Can't Live Without You, I Don't Even Want to Try, Baby, I Can't Live Without You. So I ask students to draw a baby, and they draw a baby. But in this case, it isn't a baby. Baby, I Can't Live Without You is a person like 19 years old. So you know that they don't know the meaning of the song, even though they enjoy it. But when they learn this meaning of baby, it's playful. So songs are playful. Many poems are playful. I mean, obviously, some songs are very sad. But a lot of the songs, even the sad songs, they're playful because they use language in original ways. So anything that's a little original becomes playful. You do things just slightly differently and it becomes playful. You can wear different colored shirts or blouses. You can wear a strange hat one day. It just adds kind of a open atmosphere to the classroom. I know that in some schools they have to wear a uniform, a shirt and tie or whatever. And in a way that decreases the idea of playfulness. So some students like to put their glasses on like this just for fun, upside down, right? And the teacher says, put them on right. Well, let them put them on, you know, this way. Let them play with their clothing, you know. Wear one earring instead of two, whatever. So it's not easy to define playfulness. I gave you some examples, and it's different in different schools and with different teachers. But being joyful about using the language
Mhm.
Instead of always saying, that's wrong, study harder, do it again. Saying, oh, let's work on that. Let's work on that. Yeah. That's, so not being stern and rigid is it in itself being a little playful.
Mhm.
In New York City, there's a rule. I'll illustrate this. Boys can't wear baseball caps. So the teachers stand in the hallway during the periods when the students go from one classroom to another classroom, from chemistry class to English class to physics class. Take off your hat. It's very, very unplayful. Take off, they shout at the students. They say that if you have your hat, it shows disrespect.
Mm.
Now, a lot of the students wear their hat like this, some like this. To them, it's playful. When you say take off your hat and you shout it, that's killing playfulness. Curiosity is playfulness. So they're curious. What will my friend think if I wear my hat like this or like this? They don't like it. They say, I don't like that. You look like a jerk. But they say it in a playful way, not in an angry way, right? So I mentioned curiosity. People wonder about things. If you look at children, sometimes in a like McDonald's or any place that has straws, some children, when they see a straw for the first time, they put it in the cup and they put the straw in their nose to see what happens if they go like this instead of it in their mouth. Now, some parents say, don't do that. That's dirty. And other parents just say, look, Johnny's putting the straw in his nose. How does it feel? Put it in your mouth. Which do you like better? It's playful instead of don't do this, don't do that. So rules, to me, are the opposite of playfulness. So one of my books is Breaking Rules.
Yeah.
Because I think rules are detrimental to learning. I think that rules stifle curiosity. Rules, regulations, following the same procedure every day. To me, all of those things dampen curiosity. And that means it's not playful in the class. Not playful.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I watch kids outside of class that are playing all the time. Some of the things I might think are stupid, but they're having a wonderful time. They're laughing, smiling. I mean, hide and seek. One kid runs and hides behind the bush. And when the other person finds him, it's like they discovered America for the first time. They're so joyful. It's a trivial thing, but they like to just see if I can do something to see if the other person can figure it out. So I think learning should be figuring things out, not being told. Figuring things out on their own. And when you draw those sketches, they're figuring it out on their own. First, they draw the sketches, then they have to remember what
Mm-hmm.
in the pattern. And then you go to their life. Do you like to play baseball? I hate to play baseball. Michael Jordan loved to play basketball, but he hated to dance. Michael Jackson loved to dance. Badminton, rugby, cricket, soccer, 20. And again, you make a ridiculous sentence. Instead of he didn't like to play baseball, he didn't like to do 6 different sports, which makes it more fun. Because then you're not just practicing the language, you're creating something. And to creating something, saying something that you never said before, saying something that nobody else said before, is creating something. And creating something is joyful, and joyful things are another way of playing with the language. So play with your teaching. Write the word backwards on the board and see what happens. That's playing.
Yeah.
Closing your eyes and pointing to them so you don't know who you're pointing to. That's playful.
I see. Okay.
Having students put up,
Sorry.
No, that's all.
But probably the last question I would like to ask you about your book, Small Changes, and the course that you conducted on being a reflective teacher. So, but mostly about the book, certainly. So, what ideas you would like teachers to take from your book? So, what are the main ideas, main things you would like teachers to take from the book?
Number one is always be skeptical. Skeptical, question everything. And number two is the students can always do it. We underestimate the students. So one of the videos shows a student taking a cufflink off of my shirt. It turns out the cufflink was broken, so it made it more difficult. So I said, take this out. He said, how? I smiled. So then he continued to work with it. Then there was a female student sitting next to him. Now, number one, they're never going to have to take a cufflink out of a shirt. Maybe she'll take it out of a blouse, unlikely. Very few people use cufflinks these days, especially young people that I know. So ridiculous activity, but something they had never done before. And he just wanted to see if he could do it.
Yeah.
And she wanted to see how to do it by looking at him like that. It was as if he was discovering uranium. So finally he did it, and he said, I did it. And I put my hand on his shoulder. I said, you can always do it. You can always do it. So that's the second message. Be skeptical. Your students can always do it. If they can't do it, the task is too difficult, or you don't give them enough time.
I see.
If the task is appropriate and you give them enough time, they can do it. Now, it used to be in American hotels, when you checked in, a man came with you to your room carrying a bag, key. And he put the key in the door and he said, the key turns to the right. Then he opened the door. He put the bag down, handed you the key. Then he went to the lamp and he said, this is how you turn on the lamp. And then you gave the man $2. Now, I've turned on 100,000 lamps in my life. I don't need anybody to show me how to turn on the lamp. If I put the lock and I turn it to the right and it doesn't, but the more we show and tell, the more we do, the less the students do. So John Dewey from Teachers College at Columbia, 1938, we learn by doing. We learn by doing. So you have to use language, you have to do activities. That's what I mean by teacher getting out of the way. So the students can always do it. If they can't, it's something wrong with the task. Either it's too difficult, or we're presenting it in a way that we want them to do, or we don't give them enough time. They can always do it. We underestimate students, and we do too much. When people don't do something, they immediately do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was visiting a friend's house, and he gave me the key, and he was standing behind me. But for some reason, he gave me the key. So I put the key and I turned it to the right, and it didn't open. And just as I was turning it to the left, what do you think he said? Turn it to the left. Well, I was doing it. I mean, as soon as you turn it to the right and it doesn't work, you try the left. You don't need somebody to say, turn it to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I started to put it in, another friend, and it didn't go in. And as soon as I turned it over to put it in the other way, the person said, it goes in the other way. Well, I know that. So we tell the students too much. We don't let them figure it out because many reasons, but silence is one, and we want them to do it right away. If they're learning something, it takes time. So give them time. Get out of the way. Be skeptical. Get out of the way. They can do anything. You can always do it. Did you look at that video incidentally?
Yes, yes.
What was your reaction?
Well, first of all, yeah, I really like that he said, I did it. So it
Right.
was true that it wasn't that you helped me or you showed me, I did it. So, and he did, and he said it without thinking what he is actually saying. So he
No,
just,
exactly.
yeah. And I also like the video with the girl who discovered the meaning of the word dismount,
Right.
dismount. Yeah, and it was really, a very memorable video because yes, the emotions were genuine, and she figured out it herself. Yeah, I liked it very much.
And then at the end, she says, got it. Got
Yeah.
it. I got it. I got it. She had been in New Zealand, where I lived for 8 years, and she had ridden many horses there. So she knew about riding horses, but nobody asks somebody, did you dismount this morning? You say, did you get off the, but you don't even ask to get off. You say, wait, the ride this morning. Nobody's going to say, did you dismount?
No.
Did you get off the horse? So she knew she had dismounted many horses, so she knew without knowing the word. And that's another point. People can know have had the experience and not necessarily knowing the word. But then she figured out the word and then connected it with the action. So learning by doing, that's what she was doing, learning by doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So that, yeah. And the same with another boy who also was working on the same word, but he drew a picture of a mountain and a person going down. And what I liked about that video, then he said, aha. So he said that aha moment, he just actually voiced that, so, aha, I got it. So this was, yeah, kind of a moment that I really appreciated watching. It's true. So yeah, very nice videos actually, because yes, they show a lot. So they show things from different perspectives, and we start seeing things
And
ourselves.
that was the first time that we've seen those students in our lives. We had never seen those students before. Never. And people say that students act stiff or they aren't spontaneous. Students were very genuine
Mm-hmm.
and spontaneous. They didn't know us. We didn't know them. In that dismounted video, there was the teacher who was teaching. There were 2 video cameras, one held by a man. There were 3 other teachers. I was in the background asking questions. So there were 5 adults or 6 and 2 video cameras. And she was as if no one was there, totally oblivious to, she was totally in the desk.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by getting out of the way.
Yeah.
And in the interview, maybe we should start with the something about the videos, because I think that the videos, if people look at a few of the videos, I think well, I don't know what you thought, but I think it's very powerful to introduce my ideas because they see it.
Yeah.
They see the ideas in action.
Yeah, it's true.